The Inanimate War is a top-down dungeon crawler set in an era where humanity is long gone. You get to play as Fisk, where they are one of the three characters we had in mind. Stubby and Kiri were the other two characters, but we weren't able to get to developing them. The setting is within a ruined temple containing a labyrinth of doors, keys, and mobs. The inanimates are Stubby, Fisk, and Kiri, a rock, paper, and a pair of scissors brought to life. There are 3 levels, each with a different objective. Complete the objectives in order to unlock the door, and defeat the 3 levels to win the game.
The story centers around the 3 characters and their journey to overcome the dangers of the Forgotten World, learn about what happened to humanity, and how they came to be as inanimates. As a quick synopsis, inanimates were man's creation. They brought rock, paper, and metal to life to work for them in harmony, but now the descendants have to discover what happened to their creators after centuries of extinction. The feel of the map is supposed to be slightly ominous. Although it is a temple, it is not a place of salvation, rather it is a war zone of creatures that have long inhabited the abandoned crypts. We curated a homebrew asset pack with a combination of our former artist sprites and other assets found online. The tile set gives the proper feeling of ruins and remnants of an ancient past.
The gameplay itself is similar to other dungeon crawlers. WASD to move, melee attack is left mouse button, ranged attack is right mouse button. Dashing is with the shift key. The player's goal is displayed under their current stats, as well as various information at the top left hand side of the screen, giving the player objectives to complete in order to get to the next floor. The player levels up by picking up XP from slain enemies, which upgrades all of their base stats along the way. By finding the room key, killing X amount of enemies, slaying spider bosses, the player can hope to achieve victory. By making the game focus on spider bosses whenever fought, as in the game view will center on a living instance of the boss, we mimic the feel of a classic boss fight. The player gets kind of taken by surprise whenever a spider boss is spawned, which is triggered by a player walking over an invisible block, and they're usually knocked back pretty hard by the enemy. At the start of the game, the player is given the opportunity to switch weapons from a sword to an axe. The gameplay heavily encourages the use of both melee and ranged attacks, but the energy cost and reduced damage for ranged spells limits the ability for the player to spam to win. For every enemy killed, there's a slight chance that the enemy kill results in not only XP, but a health pack to rejuvenate player HP. Attacks are cast in the direction of the mouse cursor to allow for smoother gameplay and to make player attacks when being chased a viable option.
Let's start off with the positives. The objective system, the UX implementation, and the enemy AI, despite the time constraints, turned out to be pretty well. The objective system was designed to act as a silent guide through the game. We couldn't provide much of a tutorial to teach the mechanics itself, but we wanted the player to know at least where to go or what they were trying to do. The UX part of the game, like the main menu, the SFX, the music, they were all created with the player in mind. Although it isn't completely a flushed out game, but we just wanted to give a feel of a demo rather than a prototype. The game engine and the tools we designed, especially the enemy AI, is arguably our most developed part of the game. The enemies make the game fun, and we valued fun over aesthetics. Some of the things worked out really well and really gave the game the feel of an RPG. We have a saving system, a loading system. The player dies, the player can restart. There's bosses, there's different kinds of enemies. The collision, the entire game uses the physics engine to run off of, and instead of using a while loop to measure, is the player gonna collide with an object, I just made the density of an object infinity so that even if they collide, they can't move the object. So that in itself fixed the problem of collision. There's knockback, there's enemy knockbacks, the enemy AI wanders around the map, the enemy AI locks onto you if you're within their sight range, and they're just there to, make the game more fun. I think the engine we have in our hands here is really awesome and works out quite well. It was designed with future upgrades and future systems in mind, but unfortunately, with few of our core members leaving the team, we were unable to do those. But that's a topic about what we could have done better, and I'll let Olivia continue on.
As for what went wrong, the loss of 2 members, the high expectations of the endgame, and too few points of communication. Losing 2 members, one being our artist, really put a dent in what we wanted to make because it was designed around the fact that someone was going to draw our game art and that we would have enough people to split the work with. When we lost the 2 members, we had to narrow down the scope of the game significantly, and it didn't come out quite like we had planned in the beginning, but it's still a quite impressive display of our hard work despite that.
The high expectations of our game were more about how it was going to look than what it was going to have. The mechanics of the game, I feel, are pretty fleshed out to support our original concept. We simply didn't have the time, I feel, to implement all these different characters, but when it came to our art and our visual style, we had kind of the issue that we lost our artist and couldn't continue to develop the sprites needed in the same style. So also the original idea was supposed to be an isometric game, which we quickly found would be way too difficult to implement, especially after losing 2 players. We completely switched from an original concept of a side-scroller to an isometric game to top-down because it was a humble combination of the two, and Game Maker Studio 2 better supported top-down over isometric gameplay.
Admittedly, we should have communicated quite a bit more through the semester. We had classes, exams, assignments, and whatever else cropped up, so time management was a real problem. Of course, the game isn't what we wanted it to be originally, as mentioned before, but what exactly changed?
The major changes of the game's core loop include the transition from isometric to top-down point of view, 3 playable characters to just 1, and cutting it down from 30 playable levels to only 3 playable levels.
What we really learned is that it is imperative to not get too ahead of yourself. It is okay to start small, then gradually make it more complex once you've perfected what you've planned. Getting basic systems implemented first is important for building a game from the ground up.
Often and consistent communication is a must. We could only find time once a week or so to get together to discuss what we had planned to do and when. That led us to do a game jam toward the end of the semester. All in all, it was a good experience to create something other people can interact with. Despite the pitfalls in both design and people, we believe we delivered a game pretty impressive for our skill set and time constraints.